This hearing will examine the steps the military has taken to ensure the safety of its bases, installations, and recruiting stations. In the last 2 years, 2 attacks on American military installations within the United States have been successful. One attack occurred at Fort Hood, Texas, where 13 people were killed. In the Fort Hood incident, the defendant is still awaiting a military court-martial. A second attack occurred in a recruiting station in Little Rock, Arkansas. 1 person was killed and 1 person was wounded. In the Little Rock case, the defendant pled guilty to murder in state court. I imagine my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to use these 2 attacks to paint a picture about the nature of violent extremist threat facing this nation. Once again, the picture they draw is not likely to be accurate, nuanced, or subtle. In the past, I've expressed my concerns about the nature and directions of these hearings. My concerns are amplified today. Focusing on the followers of one religion as the only creditable threat to the nation's security is inaccurate, narrow, and blocks consideration of emerging threats. Our military is open to all faiths. A congressional hearing that focuses on religion and the military is likely to harm unit cohesion and undermine morale within our military. A congressional hearing that identifies one religion as a likely threat within the military is not only inaccurate, but unwise. As a matter of practicality, I'm certain that on the battlefield, how a soldier prays is probably less important than how well he or she shoots. But practicalities aside, as we begin this hearing, I think it's appropriate to acknowledge and remember that today is the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. That single event, an unprovoked attack on an American military installation in an American territory, propelled this country into World War II. December 7, 1941 was a day that will live in infamy. The veterans of World War II fought to stop the spread of totalitarian rule, halt genocide, and restore freedom. They risked their lives to defend this nation. The same can be said of today's veterans. The men and women returning from Afghanistan and Iraq have placed their lives on the line, and each one volunteered to go. So as we think about the significance of this day in history and the possible meaning of this hearing, we must begin by thinking about what these 2 groups of soldiers fought for. Each of them answered the call to arms because they believe in America. Each fought because they believe this country is a beacon of hope and freedom in a troubled world. They will be willing to shed their blood to protect and defend the rights and liberties guaranteed by the Constitution. So as we think about our debts to the veterans of past wars, let us not forget our most basic obligation to those who currently serve. We owe them a clear understanding of their mission and a clear definition of the enemy. Their enemy is not a religion. Their mission is not to defeat an ideology. And while some of my colleagues appear to have difficulty grasping this, I'm glad the military people understand it. In the days after Fort Hood shooting, then Defense Secretary Gates refused to lay this tragedy at the feet of one man or one religion. He appointed a board and gave them the mission of reviewing what happened, why it happened, and what could be done to prevent the same thing from happening in the future. The review board did not sweep this incident under the rug. They did not seek easy explanations and simple answers. They identified deficiencies in DoD programs and policies on force protection, emergency response procedures, and threat identification. And once they identified the problems, they began to solve them. To date, DoD has completed 43 of the review board's recommendations. 15 additional recommendations should be completed by March 2012. However, the military's ability to move forward and complete the remaining recommendations depend entirely on us. Since September 11th, Congress has approved a total of $1.283 trillion for military operation, base security, reconstruction, foreign aid, embassy costs, and veterans' health care associated with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Budget cuts may prevent the implementation of the rest of these recommendations. Today, I hope we can reach a bipartisan, bicameral agreement that the military should have the funding it needs to prevent another tragedy like Fort Hood. If we can, then something good will have come out of this hearing. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.